begin transmission.
This program is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
And good afternoon, everybody. It is after 12 o'clock here Central Time. I'm Bill, and this is Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures, and we're having a Sunday hangout. Got a lot of people here in the chat. Let me make just a quick effort here to shout everybody out that's here before I bring my guests in. In the beginning of the show here, we had Epic Badger who came in. It's good to see you, Jesse Hughes. Hope to see you later on in the show. We have Bjorn Jorgensen who's here. Hey, Bjorn, how's it going? Shaitan's Hammer came in to say hello. Figuratively speaking, was able to get off today, which is unusual, and I'm glad to see him. And Epic Badger says that his childhood preferred scale was the micro scale, and we'll talk about scale today. That's what we're going to talk about. Mike from Manic Plastic Toy Shop is here. Good to see you, Mike. Boba Hicks is here. And of course, one of my other guests, Wilhelm Toy and Hobby, is here today. And the chat has just been going nutso ever since we got here today. So let's see if I can catch up real quick before we start the show. And there we go. And let's see what everybody's saying. Oh, look at here. There is Mary Otwall, better known as Radical Mom. Good to see you, Radical Mom. Glad you could come in to hang out. And there's Gojatron. I'm out with the missus today. I'm going to catch the replay. Have a good show. Well, thank you, Carl. We'll be sure and try to do that. Everybody's saying hey to each other. Coming on down the list here. I think that catches up everybody. Glad everybody's here. And now let me bring in my first guest, who is Wilhelm Toy and Hobby.
Hello, hey, toy friends. How are you?
All right. Good to see you, Will. I'm glad.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I'm really glad that you decided to do an entire show based on why 1/18 scale is the best scale. It's just amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Right.
I love them all. I love all the scales, but
I know, but I actually did bring you on for it because of 3 3/4 scale, because it is your favorite scale. I think you're my 3 3/4 inch scale expert. And if I'm going to talk about the different scales and how they work together and how you can use one scale as opposed to another, maybe even in the same diorama, I wanted to have someone who was an expert on that scale to come in and be with me today. So I thought that you were the perfect choice.
Well, thank you very much for that. It's been a long time, and just glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And let's bring our next guest in, Jesse Hughes, who is our expert on micro scale. So let me bring Jesse in here as everything seems to be kind of, there we go. Hey, Jess, how's it going, my friend? This is the Epic Badger, everybody.
Hello, folks. I figured since we're doing this show on scale, I know Will likes his 1/18, but I'm a bit more of a little guy.
And
Put
I
your
love
hand
those.
behind that a little bit and bring it up to the camera, and I'm embiggen you there, and we'll see if we can't get that to come into focus. There we go. Little bitty Godzilla and little bitty Mecha Godzilla, and they're fighting. That looks like something that was from the old open up sets, like was it Playmates that did those? Will Trendmaster.
Trendmaster. Jesse knows much better than I do. I
I'm
think.
sorry,
Yeah,
Jesse.
Trendmasters did a lot of the Godzilla line in the 80s and 90s. Goji would probably be more the expert on the history of Trendmasters. I just know that they made toys that I played with.
Right, and I had some of the larger scale Trendmasters stuff. I never did get the tiny play sets with the tiny micro figures in them, but it's good to see those because I haven't seen Trendmasters toys shown off in a long time. So it's kind of nice to see those. Oops. Let's see if I can move some stuff around here. I'm moving you down just a hair there, Will.
The little ones are good too because you could drop them and they don't break.
Nothing breaks.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what topics might come up today, and I had half an hour. I am moving, but I put a shelf right here next to me with like all the micro stuff that I could think of.
Uh-huh.
So if there's a particular brand that just happens to come up in conversation.
Well, that's something that we might talk about here in a minute. I'm going to fire up the old toy cam here for just a second. It's kind of low on juice, so we may not be able to use it exclusively today. But I put a variety of figures out on the toy cam shelf, and I wanted to kind of show those off just a little bit. So I'm going to change over to this spotlight layout. I'm having some latency issues with StreamYard, so just bear with me there as I try to change scenes. But as you can see, especially out there in the front, I've got a bat computer and a bat computer, and I've got a bust of Shakespeare and a bust of Shakespeare. And one of those bat computers came with a Todd McFarlane set that was supposed to be scaled for the McFarlane figures, which were about the size of that Mattel Batman that's standing there next to it. And as you can see, it is not. It is more scaled towards, and what is this, 1/16 scale, Will?
Is that Superpowers? Yeah, they're 5-inch. So yeah, maybe 1/16. I'm not really sure exactly what that is, but yeah, they're
1/16 or 1/18, I think, is what we call 3 3/4.
Yeah, 3 3/4 to 4-inch. It all kind of fits in there, but yeah, those are 5-inch. So they're just a little bigger, but yeah, that back computer is undersized clearly for
right. It is scaled for that Batman from Superpowers, whereas the Mattel Batman, which is approximately the same size as Toddy Mac's Batman, it's just a little better articulated and better looking, in my opinion, is standing next to the bat computer that that Mattel put out as a Batcave playset. I mean, it's not much of a Batcave playset, but it came with the lighter colored bust of Shakespeare, which is supposed to be scaled exactly right for that scale. The larger bust of Shakespeare that you see over there came from the Wayne Library / Study playset that Todd McFarlane did. So as you can see, everything is subjective when it comes to these scales. Which is correct on that bust of Shakespeare, and does it really matter? And that's a good question to start out with. So I'll throw that at you two guys and let see what your thoughts are. We'll start with Will.
Yeah, so Bill, I've just read, because I don't have any of the McFarlane stuff, but I've read that most of it is underscaled, and McFarlane is pretty famous for just kind of throwing scale to the wind. He just makes stuff, he put out all that other stuff at 7-inch when the popular scale is 6-inch, so you'd be able to integrate them together. So he just throws he just does whatever he wants. But yeah, the accessories here, I don't think it's as important, even though they are undersized and they fit like a 1/18 scale even better than they do the figures that they came with. But for small props like this and background pieces, it's a little less important than like a vehicle where the figure actually has to integrate with the vehicle. So with these, they're just standing next to them, so you can move if you're doing toy photography, for example, you could use some perspective and kind of make them work. Uh, so on these, it's not as important, but it would be nice if they took a little more time, kind of dialed it in a little better, and made it at least fit the thing it comes with. That's kind of the problem there. So that's just my opinion on it. What do you think?
I agree on the photography part, because I can take different sizes. I could take an actual bust and make it look like a 1/18 scale bust if I position the camera correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the question for Will and Bill, for those of us who don't collect this DC stuff from Mattel or McFarlane. What's the price economy on, like, are you, even though they're smaller or bigger, do you feel like you're at least getting a good deal on them? Or do you feel like you're overpaying for some versus others?
I'll answer that first. As far as I'm concerned, these are toys I wished I had when I was a kid. First of all, that should have came out back when we were watching Batman reruns on television. Instead, what we got was the Mego stuff, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Mego. I played with those and enjoyed them, but this is the kind of stuff that appeals to guys that are mine and Will's age, because we grew up watching reruns of Batman on TV, and we can remember very fondly, I'm sure, Will, watching these shows. Now, as far as scale goes, I was a bit disappointed with the scale of the Batcave compared to the figures that it was supposed to go with, but it didn't bother me so much because it actually did something that I've always wanted, which was to have a Batman 66 style backdrop for Superpowers Batman's Batcave. So it kind of worked out in that regard. Now, what I do find very interesting is the scale of props that go with, say, the Bat computer there that Mattel did, as opposed to what came in the Wayne study or / library playset that Todd McFarlane did. So what is the size of the bust of Shakespeare that sits on Bruce Wayne's desk? Is it the smaller version that Mattel has produced over there that goes with that big old Bat computer, or is it that slightly larger bust of Shakespeare that's supposed to go with the Wayne study? Well, like Will said, that kind of stuff really doesn't matter, because have you gone on the set of Batman and measured the bust of Shakespeare? No, and neither have I, and neither did they. They just kind of approximated scale, and when you start getting to that point, it doesn't matter, because it's just too small to matter. I'll throw that back at Will and see what his idea is on that.
Yeah. Hi, Paula. How are you?
Hey,
I hope you're feeling better.
I'm trying.
Yeah, she had a little scare. I think you heard about that the other night, Will. Yeah, she's still moving around a little slower than normal, but she's got some goo pills that make her feel just a little bit better.
Sleepy.
Good. That's good. Get some rest. Don't worry about anything else. Just take care of yourself. But yeah, as far as value goes, I think these are, they're a good value. I think, based on what I've seen out there. I haven't heard anyone really complaining about the price, and they give you a lot in these sets. There's a lot of little extras that they throw in there. Like I said, a little more care, a little more attention to detail could have been done. But that happy accident that they work with other scales, I have seen other people buying them. For example, I bought the 7 points, 3 3/4 inch 66 Batman playset. It came with a Batmobile, a bunch of characters, and a Batcave, but it was like a cardboard backdrop. And a lot of people were a little put off by the quality of that one. I've seen some videos there. I never actually opened mine, but I heard that if you get the McFarlane one, you could set your 3 3/4 inch Batman stuff up in there, and it'll look pretty good. And it's a much better playset than the cardboard one. So, I think the McFarlane stuff sells, man. I don't see it going to clearance. I know sometimes they do, but my store never has them in stock.
I think there's a
Yeah.
shortage in availability for like what you are looking for with Batman. Like you want this Batman 66 stuff. Who else is making it? And if they can do it for a relatively low price, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of complaint, even if there's imperfections.
That 7-point set, which was 3 3/4 inch, and I think I got it from Big Bad Toy Store on sale. It was about $100, but you got, I forget how many, 5 or 6 figures with it, the Batmobile, and the play set. It was a big box set. It was a pretty good value. When you add it up, you're paying about $10 a figure. You'd pay $20 or $30 for it. But like I said, the unboxings I've seen on it, people were upset about the quality of the figures and things like that. I've never actually opened mine up, so I haven't had a chance to do it. But I, just like Bill, wanted a 66 Batman Batcave. I mean, who doesn't? As far as Bill saying, did I grow up with it? Oh my God, it was like the only thing I watched, man. And, for 5 Halloweens in a row, I was Batman. And this goes from like as early as I can remember. I might have been Batman before that. This is just from what I can remember. But from 5 to 10, I was Batman every single year. That was my go-to Halloween costume, and most of it was based on the Adam West Batman.
Absolutely, because that was our Batman for the longest period of time. Now, what do we got here, Jess? Is that a Batman playset?
No, I'm Batman.
Oh. Say it right. I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. Well, who's saying it? Like Adam West.
Yeah.
Adam West has a little bit of like respect.
No, that looks like Michael.
I'm Batman. Yeah, this is Keaton. This is the oh shoot, I forgot the movie. It's the third one with Jim Carrey and
Batman.
It's Forever, isn't it?
Is it Batman Forever?
Yeah, it is Forever. Yeah, this is a playset. It does come with, if I can pop it open, comes with a little Batmobile. Comes with some features. The figures are in the back. There they are. So you got a little Batman. And you've got a little Two-Face.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they did some good detail there.
Bjorn got a little dig there on you. You didn't do the Batman voice, so it don't count. But he did. I spurred him on to do that.
Yeah. There's so many voices. I can't be them all.
I understand. And I got these latency issues going on here. There it goes. World Made of Cardboard says, I love cardboard. He's talking about that set you were talking about. And he goes, I love cardboard play sets.
I've got no problem with them. I think they're great, especially for adult collectors. Mm-hmm. Now, for kids, they were still fun. I had some of those cardboard, backdrops, or, I would use a cardboard box as a playset when I was a kid. And they just don't hold up, to rough play. But if you're just putting them on a shelf or displaying them, paper craft, those sets that you've done, Bill, they hold up. They sit on the shelf. No one's messing with them. They look great. I think they're perfectly.
What's funny about cardboard? I was thinking about it the other day. In the 90s, because I can only speak for my generation, and the late 80s, every kid made a cardboard playset. And it was on St. Patrick's Day. Because in elementary school every year, we had to take boxes and create these leprechaun traps. So and of course, Lucky Charms heard about it and started, putting designs on the back of their boxes that you could cut out and make little traps. I was just thinking, every kid in the 90s had to make cardboard play sets.
Yeah, I never heard of that. That's pretty cool.
We didn't do that either, but that sounds like a lot of fun. And of course, I don't think I was eating Lucky Charms at that time, so I don't remember that particular thing being on the back of the box. But that sounded like a lot of fun. But you were talking about cardboard play sets. Action Figure Theater had his site where you could download the cardboard sets that he used in his web comics, and he did a Batman set for the little small Batman figures that came out, and 3 3/4 inch figures that came out a few years ago, which I have them around here somewhere, but I can't put my hands on them. They came with a Batmobile, Batman, Robin, I think Catwoman. There was a Batgirl, I think, in that set. Several different figures, but they were small 3 3/4 inch figures, kind of like the ones that the Reaction does. They were in that kind of style, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And he had done that set for that, and I actually made that set. And for a long time, that was kind of my little backdrop, and it's about the same size as that McFarlane set over there.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen the picture that I did a few years ago of my Batcave Command Center, when I had it on the Batcave side, and I had some extra little bits and bobs in there. One of them was the little put together cardstock Bat computer that you could make from that Action Figure Theater set that he had put out, Phil had put out at that time. And it fit perfectly with the Superpowers figures, and it's about the same size as that Todd McFarlane one over there. So, I kind of wanted to touch on that, and I have a variety of figures back there. And we talk about 1/12 scale. So, the next question that comes to mind here is, and I'm going to show them on this camera instead of the toy cam, because it's just not got the juice in it to keep on continuously today. And I apologize for that, folks, but I'm going to embiggen myself here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this is the Mattel figure, which is roughly the same size as the McFarlane figure. It's just got a little better articulation and kind of looks better. Now, the McFarlane figure doesn't have an ab crunch in it, and some people like them and some people don't. And I think the McFarlane chose not to put an ab crunch in his because of the way it makes the front look. He wanted the front to look more natural. Well, of course, then there's this Batman here, okay, who does have an ab crunch, but it's hidden inside of his body here, and he looks much more realistic. This is a 1/12 scale figure. This is supposed to be a 1/12 scale figure. So scale is subjective as well. And no, I'm not holding him further back from this guy. I'm on him right side by side. So this figure here, which is supposed to be 1/12 scale, comes up to about the shoulder height of this figure, which is supposed to be 1/12 scale. So all of this scale is subjective. So which is the correct scale? Is it this guy or is it this guy? I'm going to say it's probably this guy instead of this guy, but I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
My thought is, I mean, it kind of depends. Like if you're just collecting a figure, I think the scale doesn't matter as long as you're getting the figure you want to put on your shelf. Mm-hmm. It's when you start to add additional figures for a team or something, that's when the scale kind of matters. And that's where you kind of have to pick a specific line, whether it's Mattel or McFarlane, because you need them all to line up correctly. I kind of play with scales. So like my fantasy shelf, which is boxed away right now, I have Mythic Legions, I have Loose Collector, like Red Sonja up there. I've got different scales, some Motu mixed in, because for me, fantasy is all about size and bulkiness and weird shapes and proportions. But really, if you just want the one figure, scale doesn't matter as long as it's the one figure you want. But once you add a team to it, you have to sort of choose a brand to make it all work.
I'm kind of moving through the chat here, and I agree with you there, Jesse. It says we should all collect in the fourth dimension to save space. I wish I had a portable hole. Wouldn't that be nice? And I could take all of my stuff and put it in the portable hole, and then my room wouldn't be a junk heap. And I could maybe go inside the portable hole, and it'd be like all my stuff would be in there, and it would be organized, and I could take what I wanted out of the portable hole and come back out of it, or maybe have a dimensionally transcendental closet. And that would be perfect right there.
It's your own Narnia. You just open the door and you have this whole world to display.
Yeah, but it's like a huge warehouse that's all set up where all my stuff is organized.
So I want to make a response to World Made of Cardboard. He said, "I never made a leprechaun trap. I had a sad life, I guess." Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, in the 90s in the remote mountains, we had nothing else to do. You have a kindergarten, first grade teacher who's trying to take care of these bored kids. Sometimes they bring in an apple press, an old wooden one, and make us apple juice for a day, and that would excite us. So, hey, what do we have around? Oh, cardboard cereal boxes. Here, make a leprechaun trap. I don't know. We don't have dollar stores invented yet.
Sounds to me like Wyoming was even further back in the past than the Mississippi was back in those days.
Oh, I grew up in Northern California, and when I say northern, I don't mean Bay Area. That's like central. I mean like Shasta, Trinity County, Redding,
up there near Oregon.
Yeah, way up in the north end. But yeah, same thing as Wyoming. It's just, what do you do as a kid? Your teachers have to come up with something, and making cardboard play sets was what we did in that town. So it wasn't that you had a sad life.
Well, I can remember, being a kid and playing in the cardboard box that the big stuff came in, and ignoring the other toys that I got for Christmas. I don't know if you can remember back that far or not, Will, but I really remember that. A cardboard box could be just about anything you wanted it to be. It could be a spaceship. It could be a house. It could be a car. Boba Hicks says Mafex claims to be true 1/12 scale, or Mafex. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that wrong or right. I don't care. Mafex says they claim to be true 1/12 scale. Is that true, guys? You think that Mafex is the only true 1/12 scale?
I personally don't know, because I don't collect those. But what I was going to say about the scale thing is, some of them are, they're generally 1/18 scale or generally 1/12 scale. I think it all has to do with, obviously adult collectibles like Mafex or Mafex or whatever you call it there. Most of those figures are going up and they're just being presented on a shelf. They're in a collection. Kids aren't really playing with them. That's fine. And I also understand for manufacturing purposes why, like a line like G.I. Joe, it used to always bother me that all the men and all the women and everyone were all the same height. They were all exactly 3 3/4 inches, and I would love to see them, tall guys, short guys, all within that same scale, The Spin Master Batman line, also on some of their first ones too, they were 4-inch. So you would have a 4-inch Batman figure, and then you'd have like a monster like Killer Croc, and he would be the exact same height, and they were doing that obviously for manufacturing purposes. Like this new Killer Croc, I'm happy to say that they actually made him a lot bigger. You see, he's a lot taller than Batman there. I like when they stay in a scale. So, you find the average size man or whatever, and then you that's your midpoint, and then you can go up and down from there. That's great for me, but they work together. That's fine. But you've got competing brands. Now, I was going to go back to McFarlane and ask, why is it, do you think, that those play sets are so out of scale that they're almost 1/18 scale or even 1/16 scale instead of 1/12? And the figures are different. Now, do you think that's like an oversight? Do you think it's a cost-saving measure? Do you think it's just something that they did because they figured most people are going to keep it in the box and not open it and look at it, or what? What is their thinking? Like, what's the business reason why they wouldn't do that? Because I know, like, for example, like everyone says like GI Joe vehicles aren't actually 1/18 scale, because if you buy like a 1/18 diecast car and you try and fit a figure in it, they can't move like a human body does. So even like a compact car, you never get a figure in it. So you got to make it a little bigger. You got to make the seating area larger. So budget. That's what Shane Timer's saying. What do you
Shaitan's
think,
Hammer
guys?
says budget. I think Jesse Hughes agreed with that. I do too. I think it's a couple of reasons. Now, the first of all, let's understand that at 3 3/4 inch scale, at 1/12 scale, which is 6 inch scale, or even bigger at Mego size scale, which that's not quite Barbie size. That's an 8 inch figure, I think. The scales were never correct on the cars or the play sets or the vehicles. Okay. And even at Star Wars, when my
Sure.
Star Wars toys came out back in the day, the vehicles and the play sets were never scaled up to fit the figures. They were always very much smaller. And that was for a couple of reasons. First, yes, budget was part of it, because we got to save on the amount of plastic and the amount of tooling that we've got to do to make this stuff. One. And two, we can't make gigantic play sets that parents are not going to buy for their kids because there's no room in the house for it. I'm looking right at you, aircraft carrier for GI Joe. Okay. I mean, that thing was as big as the coffee table. Where is it going to go? In the middle of the kid's room? It certainly isn't going to go in the living room. Mom isn't going to have that.
Exactly the reason I don't have one. I actually worked and saved up money to buy it, and when my parents found out how much it or how big it was, that
They
whole
put
idea
a
was
kibosh on that. They said, William, you're not doing that.
And you notice, Will, when you scoot into 92, you get a different GI Joe playset, and it's set up in a way where it folds up and takes up vertical space, because that space is important.
And looking at these Todd McFarlane play sets, they're a bit modular. They fold up really nicely, and they go back in their box really, really well. And the way the plastic is made in the box, it folds up into that plastic tray so that you just can slide it right back in the box. And the box is a perfect way to store those. Why would I not store it in that box? Because there's so many little pieces to fly everywhere. Where would I put it? Box perfect.
I'd say there's also the like playing with the toys. You got a kid that's going to play with a toy. They got to be able to kind of hold it in one hand.
Yes.
For example, like GI Joe had the Sky Striker and they had the Night Raven, and those were two-handers. My friend had the Night Raven, I had a Sky Striker, and I'll tell you, when it was time for play, I'd pick up the Rattler, I'd pick up the Conquest X30, I'd pick up the Dragonfly, because that was a vehicle I could control with one hand and play with. So these big vehicles are cool and everything, but they're not as practical. Star Wars vehicles, the Millennium Falcon, if it was the size it was supposed to be, you need two kids to pick it up and play with.
No, actually, to be honest with you, let's think about it practically. Even at 3 3/4 scale, if you had a true Millennium Falcon size 3 3/4 scale, it would fit in the garage.
Well, they even say like the USS Flag, if that was true scale, even at 1/18 scale, it would be this. You would need a garage to keep it in.
A garage is a city block, because the aircraft carriers are absolutely huge.
They're mind-bogglingly huge.
So here's a good example, Will, of what you're talking about. Because imagine I'm my dad. My dad was in his 30s when I was born. In the 90s, it's like you have choices, and this is around the same time period. You have the reissue Kenner Power of the Force 2 Snowspeeder. Look how big it is to me, a 5'9" adult.
Yep.
My parents bought me these boyos, Action Fleet, because I love the scale. I could hold it in one hand, whereas a kid, I'm like this. But Action Fleet, I could walk around with 2 or 3 of these. I could play I could take them all outside. I could take them on a road trip. I could take one of these with me when we drive 30 minutes to the next town for the grocery store.
And this
I
is
prefer-
why I say there is no one true scale, because
No.
you'll always see reasons why. Because if you're, and when you were a kid, you're watching Star Wars, for example, and there'd always be like one scene that you'd really get into. If you're watching the snowspeeder scene, then you're in a vehicle mood. You want to go out in the yard, you want to run around, you want to fly ships, have dog fights, and do that kind of stuff. You're watching the Bespin lightsaber battle. Well, then you're grabbing some sticks. You're going out in the yard with your brothers, and you're beating each other up. And you're doing those things. But and if you want character-driven stuff, you're playing with your figures and doing those things. That's why no true scale is going to ever. It seems like over time, certain ones become more popular than others, and companies kind of jump on that trend and push towards it. For right now, a lot of the adult collectors are into toy photography. That's how they play with their toys. That's how they play and display. 1/12 scale is excellent for toy photography.
Yeah. Before, in my era, these guys were the popular scale, the 118. Like everyone, you wanted a Stargate figure, you go 118. You want Jurassic Park, you want Godzilla Force, you want McDonald's Power Ranger Happy Meal toys.
I blame Superpowers for that. Superpower started that revival of a kind of a 1/16th to 1/18th scale figure. Now, real quick, before I make a point here, Shaitan's Hammer says, as far as the playsets for Todd's idiosyncrasies may factor into the design level. That's probably true. Todd's got some problems.
Yeah.
And of course, we have Susudio here, who is a channel member. By the way, memberships are open, and please do like, subscribe, and comment today. It is so true. It is so that you have to buy the new figures. They don't want to have everything matched. They want to cut costs so that parents would buy whatever was offered. That's a pretty good point. And then World Made of Cardboard says, usually a vehicle is sized differently to fit the figure. Stand beside your car's wheel. It will likely come up to just above your knee. For action figures, the tires are much bigger. And that's a good point. But it brings up another point that we got to keep in mind. When Kenner started this, let's just really get down to the nitty gritty as far as action figures, sized perfect for kid play, which is 3 3/4. I'm sure Will would agree with me, because that allows both figures, both action figures and vehicles. And why was that? Well, it's because the figures were not what was on their mind to produce. Okay. When the toy deal was made, the idea was the kids are going to want to play spaceships. They're going to want to play TIE Fighter versus X-Wing, and so forth. So the figures were an afterthought, and said, okay, well, if we're going to make these vehicles for them to play with, why don't we make some figures that they can put in and out of the cockpits of them? And that's where the action figure idea came from. So it was vehicles first, then action figures as an accessory to go with the vehicle, not the other way around like it has come to be today, where it's action figure first and the vehicle is now an accessory for the action figure. What do you think about that, guys? Start with you, Will.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Obviously, if you think about like the 60s and 70s, 1/6 scale or the 12-inch figures, G.I. Joe, Adventure Team, all of that were the thing. Now, if you were buying those for a kid, he'd have a couple of the Adventure Team things and maybe one or two of the vehicles, just based on the immense size of it. And I'm sure there's always going to be exceptions. There's going to be kids that had all of them and whatnot. But, if you got the big Jeep or the thing is, as a parent, you're purchasing once or twice a year, maybe, right? Like, you know what I mean? You'll get that big item on Christmas, whatever. So the genius there was that they could produce dozens of smaller vehicles, hundreds of figures to go in those vehicles. And now you're making how many purchases for the toy line? We're now up in the dozens, you know what I mean? Or you're collecting them year over year, and they just keep pumping stuff out. It's more repeat purchases and much more money. So I think the margins on the figures, they'd sell the figures cheap. The vehicles, they'd make the money on, right? Is that how it worked? Basically, they were making big bucks, like big margins on the vehicles and play
Mhm.
sets, and and they were selling those figures, kind of getting you hooked, and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then selling you.
Well,
But
well, the whole thing was so new
Mhm.
that if we remember correctly, George Lucas pitched this idea to every toy company there was out there. Mego, Mattel, and Kenner was the only one that took him up on the offer. And because it was so late, the movie had already come out. That Christmas, after the movie had come out back in the before summer,
yeah,
that Christmas, they didn't have the stuff tooled up or ready to go. So they had to come out with the Star Wars early bird set, which was basically a piece of cardboard that says "We owe you 4 figures."
yeah, you got a certificate saying,
Yeah,
yeah, this is good for 4 figures when we finally make them, and those
yeah,
sold out, right? People
yeah.
were
They did.
totally,
They sold completely out. Yes, I wanted one so bad. My mom was like, "No, you're not
yeah.
getting that." And of course, the rich kid that lived across town, he had them, and of course, he rubbed
I'm
that all
pretty
over.
sure that I think I saw one of the documentaries. It's been a while since there's like the Toys That Made Us came out, and
Yeah,
you saw the one. But when they were doing Masters of the Universe, they purposely made that bigger
yeah, he
because
did
He-Man
because
was supposed to be.
they wanted He-Man to not only be bigger, more muscular, but to just outshine Star Wars altogether. Because
Yeah.
Mattel was butthurt because Star Wars was eating into their bottom line and
So that
eating
was done
their.
intentionally, and they may have kept that scale or even went with a slightly different scale. Because to a kid though, you're like, why wouldn't you just make them all the same scale? Because then we would all play together. No,
There were ads.
they're about making money. They're not concerned about what would be really cool for you to
Yeah,
play with. They want you to lock into that scale so you'll always buy their product. You know
well,
what I mean?
there were actually toy ads that featured He-Man next to a Star Wars figure, and making fun of the fact that the Star Wars figure was wimpy next to He-Man.
Mhm.
But
No,
He-Man was twice as much. I remember when He-Man came out. A
yeah,
GI Joe figure was like $2.35. A He-Man figure was $4.99. And I
yes,
remember my mom saying, "Well, you could get two GI Joes, or you could get that one He-Man. It's up to you." And I'd always pick two GI Joes. I did have some He-Man. I still have some He-Man. I got some along the lines, but most of the time, if I was at the store, my mom would say, "Well, you got $5. What do you want to do with it?" And I'd always go with that, or I'd buy the even cheaper Kmart brand GI Joes, where you got like 5 of them for $5.
Sergeant Rock figures.
Yeah,
Well, the thing about that was Mattel, in their defense, made up for that with action features on the figures, like He-Man had his power
they did.
punch and things like that. Uh, War Made of Cardboard was talking about the USS flag. He said a 1/18th scale USS flag would actually be about 74 feet long.
Yeah, just
Mhm.
immense. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
And
obviously,
you have an era where Mattel and Hasbro were courting separate markets because Mattel's big money maker was Barbie, and they treated girls had to play with dolls, so they were much bigger at the time compared to the small action figures that boys got to play with. It's a reason why Hasbro bought Kenner when Kenner was having trouble because they were a direct competitor in the boys market. And every time Hasbro tried to step into that girls market with Sally or Sandy, I forget the name, and other similar sized female dolls.
You're not talking about Dusty, are you?
No, Sandy, I think was her name. It was like their third attempt at a female doll, and Mattel every time would just sue them out of the gate because it's like, you're not touching our space. Because Mattel, at least after Motu, couldn't come up with another boys brand. In the 90s, they were struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Kenner, Hasbro, Tonka, they were killing it with the smaller action scale line. So Hasbro couldn't step into Mattel space, and Mattel couldn't step into Hasbro space, and there was just this constant back and forth with those two.
Boba Hicks brings up a point here about Star Wars and that the figures were the impulse or shut me up purchase that set out there. So you buy a kid a figure,
Yeah.
here, shut up. Whereas the vehicles and play sets were the birthday / Christmas present.
Definitely worked, man, because you would get the card back and you'd look at it and you'd see that cool ship on it, and you just stare at it and you'd think about it, and you'd show your parents, or the catalog would come out and they would make those. I just love the catalog. I would have loved to be one of those catalog photographers that get to set up the diorama that looks freaking awesome, and has all the toys in it. But yeah, you would that would be something to look forward to.
And Will, to go back to your what you had mentioned earlier about shelf space and cost, you've got this boy sitting on a shelf, and it has to face this way. It can't face this way. In the 90s, we get this little boy. So you could stack about 2 of these snow speeders, on a shelf. Actually, if there was enough shelf space, you could do 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, so you could get 4 in. And going to what Boba Hicks was saying, this wasn't just a Christmas present. This was small enough and affordable enough. Midsummer, after school, school has gone out for summer, your parents could pick one up for you.
And the great thing is, you got the figures, you got the vehicle, you've got, pretty much an entire play session in a box. It's very convenient, so you can.
Yeah, and with the smaller scale, it costs less because, plastic. It also depends on the price of oil at the time. So, we saw it with the classic G.I. Joe Action Man figures being scaled down because oil prices are really high in that time in the United States, globally. So you have to scale down to get some money out of it. Well, in the 90s, they just kept doing that. They just kept making them smaller because you get more profit out of it.
Yeah, and that brings up a point, Jesse, that people may not realize. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but we may have some people that don't hear. The reason that figures went from being G.I. Joe full-size, Barbie-size action figures for boys to small 3 3/4-inch action figures was because of the price of plastic, which is petroleum-based. I like that figure there, Jesse, the fisherman.
Yeah, Fisherman Bazooka with a Walmart.
Fisherman Bazooka is the best.
Yeah, Walmart came out with this line of like 3 3/4 scale figures, but they were all like outdoor boating, and I think Target now has a similar line. But one of them had a fishing pole.
And they came out with the Duck Dynasty figures at about that same time as well. That were
I remember those. Yeah.
If you want the best ones, the best outdoor ones are at Cabela's. They have a lot of them.
And Shaitan's Hammer brings up this point. Mattel was looking at a Barbie point of view, and Barbie is partly why we got the accessories we do. Well, see, He-Man was basically a scaled down Big Jim figure, if I'm not mistaken. So there we go. And Boba Hicks says the name of the figure you're thinking of was Cindy, maybe. I was thinking about Dusty, which I always call Trailer Park Barbie, if you remember Dusty.
So Mattel had an issue with that Cindy doll. I think it got changed to Sandy in the U.S. I'm not sure. They were playing with it. In the U.S., they were getting their butts kicked by Mattel because clearly it was a competitor with Barbie. Cindy had been a known name in the UK. So it was harder for Mattel to fight Hasbro on the UK license because that doll had a pedigree in the UK. So they just kept the name. And it was like, see, you can't confuse it with Barbie because here in the UK, Cindy is known. And eventually they settled out of court. But the fact that Cindy had a pedigree in the UK kind of helped Hasbro. Hasbro.
Well, Mattel was under the mistaken impression that because Barbie was the first doll of that size for a girl to play with that style, that suddenly they had the intellectual right to any and all figures of that style, which is bullshit in my opinion. Now Warman of Cardboard says vehicles made the kids want to buy more figures, even though the G.I. Joe Vamp came with the figure. It had a seat for another, and you had to get another figure. Bigger vehicles, more figures. And Hasbro also did an interesting thing with that. There were certain figures that the only way you could get them was to buy the vehicle. The heavy artillery laser being one. You couldn't get the heavy artillery laser soldier without buying the heavy artillery laser. you could get Flash and pretend he was, but his face wasn't the same because they swapped the face out with Grunt's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and then of course Shaitan's Hammer says oil. We always go back to that again. Well, yeah, you know.
And as a Wyoming, oil is just another one of those boom and bust things. Prices get high, you lay off half your workforce, suddenly prices catch up again because people stop driving with high prices. Prices drop.
Yeah, that's
now we got to hire our workforce again. Every time, like I would look at the newspaper in Gillette, and when prices get high, they start laying off their oil workers, and then you start to see them selling everything. So if you wanted to buy stuff in Wyoming, you'd wait until high oil prices because that's when they let go of all their oil staff. Mm-hmm. But same in coal, same in natural gas. It's just energy's a boom and bust world in the West.
You know, and talking about World Made of Cardboard's, comment there, it's just they made you want to buy more figures. It's more transactions throughout the year. Mm-hmm. You know, at that lower scale or that smaller scale, a slightly lower price point, they were doing more turns. They were turning more inventory and you're buying more stuff. So it was very competitive, a hugely competitive market. So,
and you could see on these. Well, this was I want to say 93.
I think it's
94.
Yeah, it's late in the game, but yeah.
I stopped playing. I stopped buying them in early 94, so it must have been around that time. But you can see there's a turret, so there's two pegs, but you have pegs on the sides. That became common. They used to later on they would put pegs on the back too, but you could easily stick 6 to 7 figures in this. And the bigger vehicles you could put up to 10 or a dozen figures.
Mm-hmm. Even the Final Faction Arrow ATV has 2 peg holes right on the back there, so you could get two more figures right on there.
Yeah, and this was the Mudbuster was used with it came out around the time as the Bazooka was. Oh, I'm totally blanking on what line he was. He's not Eco Warrior. I totally forgot.
DEF? Was he DEF?
No.
Okay.
But it was a line, and so you would be encouraged as a kid to buy the entire line from these sub teams.
I think
also, going back to World Made of Cardboard, he sees the grenades and he's like, "Yeah, that looks like a Louisiana fisherman."
Yeah, I was going to say a stick of dynamite. Yeah.
Now, see, he couldn't be a Wyoming fisherman because in Wyoming, it's explicitly written into law you cannot use explosives to fish. So,
Battle Corps. Oh, okay.
Battle Corps, that's it.
Yeah, Battle Corps.
So, as a kid, I would want Battle Corps because they had the same colored boxes. They all looked unique. I had him. I had Giraffe Pant Leg.
I'm looking at all of them right now. Gung Ho, is that Gung Ho?
That was Gung Ho.
Or Leatherneck. No, Leatherneck.
You're right.
Yeah, Giraffe.
Gung Ho had the vest. He had a green or a red vest. There were 2 color variants.
Yeah, I pulled up Yojo and
then nothing on his head. But yeah, having a core like a sub team is a great way to sell a whole bunch of figures.
You're absolutely right, Jesse. He does have a tiger striped vest and then nothing on his head. Yep, sorry.
That's all right. Shane never said Muscle Man body lawsuit. He's talking about when Mattel went after Remco over they said that they were knocking off He-Man figures, and the court disagreed with them vehemently. You can't say that you have the rights to a wrestler stance, period. So that opened up the market to all of the knockoffs that we got, a la Galaxy Warriors. Moving on down, I want to say hey to Gap After Dark, who came to join us today. Thank you for coming in. And War Made of Cardboard says the HAL had to be pulled behind a vamp. So you had to have a vamp, and you had to buy more figures. Smaller vehicles, Ram, the Recon sled did not come with a figure, so you had to buy a figure to go with the vehicle. Mm-hmm. I mean, whoever came up with these ideas, they had the future already mapped out in their head of how it was going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, peg holes all over the vehicle so you could load up as many figures as you could on one vehicle to drive into battle, looking like a train in India or something like that, you know. So, yeah, that they knew exactly what they were doing. Explosives were illegal in Louisiana too, but that didn't stop anyone in the swamp.
I do say we do use explosives once in a while. It is legal to use explosives to remove beaver dens.
And of course, here we have Shaitan's hammer throwing in monkey wrench into everything. And Transformers say, "Screw you, scale. What's this scale thing?" I mean, we've got Megatron who turns into a handgun, and we've got Optimus Prime who turns into a tractor trailer. And when they're in their robot form, they're the same size fighting each other. But what about that handgun? Did it shrink down to become handgun size, or was he just a huge handgun?
Didn't they turn him into a tank later?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
They did. But I'm talking about the
which made
original
much more
line.
sense.
There's two different lines in Japan. It was two different lines. The lines where it turned into a handgun or a radio or whatever. That was a different line than the ones that turn into cars and airplanes.
Mine turned into animals.
Yeah,
that was
those come out
completely logical. It makes total sense. You just make up the word. What was it? Mass shifting or something? They had mass shifting technology, so they could shrink down and expand.
Well,
so going back to,
if we're true believers, we can always come up with an excuse, Will.
So going back, Bill, to what you were just talking about with like building out a line. In '93, Hasbro was panicking because sales of G.I. Joe were dropping like flies.
Mm-hmm.
And they pulled, it was so creepy when you read this. They pulled in these kids for a discussion to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The criteria was so messed up. It was like, you can't be minority because minorities are too poor to buy toys. You can't be a poor kid. You can't be an unpopular kid because you don't know what your friends are buying. So they eventually got a dozen kids into a room and they're like, what are you buying? And they're like, X-Men, they're super cool. Power Rangers, they're super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Power Rangers, you're like, of course, we're going to have the figures, the Zords, the bad guys. X-Men, you're going to have the Blackbird. I still wish I had bought that from you, Will. And it's like, if you're a toy company and you can get lucky on a hit and build out a line, parents are going to just buy your line and your competitors get screwed. And that's why it's such a ruthless market. Because it's not just, it's a few figures I can buy and then switch back to a different toy line. You go all in. And it makes it hard for toy companies to compete with each other when one finally gets a hit and they've built out a massive line.
Absolutely.
And we're done.
Absolutely.
Fries are done.
Yeah. Hit that bell, folks, so you won't miss a show when it happens. But anyway, and that kind of explains where the Tiger Force came from, and the garish figures with the garish colors on them. There were several of those that came out, such as the firefighter who had the Ted Koppel's head on him, or Peter Jennings. What was his name? Barbecue had Peter Jennings' head on him, and he was red and yellow and orange all over.
Blowtorch. I bought one from Jesse, or Jesse sent me one. He sent me his.
Then you had several figures of that line where I think one of them squirted water, and he was like neon green and neon yellow and all that.
Sure.
Those were like Jesse was saying, that they had done that research where they brought in all these kids and picked their brain to see what they were buying, and at the time Power Rangers had become popular, more popular I would guess than G.I. Joe at the time, and so they were trying to copy off of the garish color schemes of that to try to get there. There you go.
There he is.
I couldn't find the others because they're all packed up, but I did find my Leatherneck and my Gung Ho.
There you go. That's
this looks like Will.
Hey, that's the one I brought to the Calhoun. was it the Rock Garden in Georgia and set him
I
up.
I actually prefer this Mindbender over the classic.
Yeah, you know what? It makes sense that he would wear a shirt in the lab, at least, when he's working on these things. But, maybe weekend Dr. Mindbender, could wear the cape and the thing and get it on. But yeah, when he's supposedly, working up evil experiments to help take over the world, put a shirt on, man. Come on.
I do agree with this.
We won't even go into Cobra Law at all. At all. World Made of Cardboard is talking about that figures were like printer cartridges for your printer. Sell the vehicle at the lower profit margin, then sell the figures at a higher profit margin. Sell them to make the kid buy more toys. I'm going to say this about printers. My brother Anthony, I'm going to call him out on this one. Every year when it's time to do his taxes, he goes to Walmart and buys another printer. Why? Because it's cheaper for him to do that than to buy new cartridges for the old one that he bought the year before. Because the only time he ever uses a printer is when he prints out his tax forms. So yeah, the printer plus the cartridges that come with it are a cheaper option than buying more printer cartridges. I prefer my lab coated Dr. Mindbender. Let's see. I used to hold my die-cast Millennium Falcon close to my eyes and the figure at arm's length. Force perspective made all the toy lines work together for me. Kind of reminds me of Doctor Who explaining to Leela how the interior of the TARDIS could fit inside of the exterior police box.
Cobra.
No.
Yeah. Oh my God. When there's, I think there's one scene in the movie where he's like flying in like a jet, and he's yelling. So Penter's like piloting a jet, yelling that like anyone could hear him. It just cracks me up. But so we talked a lot about scale. I wanted to talk about why I like 1/18th and why I'm into some of these new like Batman lines and things like that is because they're compatible. One of the things that used to kind of mess me up as a kid was, we had G.I. Joe and then Secret Wars came out, Superpowers came out. And sometimes I'd have Batman go on adventures with these guys, but they didn't fit, quite as perfectly. I love the fact that I can now integrate my Croc Master here with Killer Croc.
Yeah.
They're a match made in heaven. And that, Batman can stand side by side with G.I. Joe. And that's what gets me excited about these lines, the newer lines, is that now I can put Batman in a vamp. I couldn't do that before. You know what I mean? I could put.
Because of prices, it seems like they're going back to 3/4 inch scale for a lot of things. I hate to cut. I'm sorry I cut you off there.
Oh, no.
Something just came into my mind, and I wanted to discuss that as well. So why did 1/12 scale become the most popular scale for collectors for the longest period of time? And why were across just about nearly all toy lines, and let's go ahead and say it, the WWE wrestlers, the Marvel Legends, the DC heroes that before McFarlane got his hands on them, when I guess it was Mattel was still doing them. Why were they all at 1/12 scale? It was so that collectors and toy photographers could combine lines. They could have Superman and Spider-Man fight each other, or they could have Star Wars figures, Star Wars Black figures interacting with Marvel Legends figures, and so on and so forth. That's why I think that happened. But now the scale is shifting down somewhat to or at least they tried anyway to shift down. I don't know how well collectors are going for that. What do you think about that, guys?
So I think I'm gonna say I think it was maybe Valaverse was on a stream and he was talking about manufacturing, and you get some really good insights from him on the process of making toys. The advantages to 1/12 scale, obviously greater detail, you could get superior articulation because these small joints, so here is a not Marauders, Fresh Monkey Fiction. Oh no, this is a Marauders Gunrunner figure. These are made very similar to the modern GI Joe figure, and they're not O-ring, but they've got double joints and stuff. The smaller these joints are, the harder they are to kind of make. At that 1/6 scale, it just kind of works. It's there's still figures that have problems with joints and connections and all of that. But the thing that Bobby Valla said that was telling was that he said the plastic cost between a 4-inch figure and a 6-inch figure is negligible. It's really not that much more. The assembly, so they mold all these parts, they put them out. Now in the factory, someone is hand assembling these. So assembly for a 1/6 or 1/12 scale figure is a lot easier to do than these 1/18 scale figures. And the parts are less kind of finicky and small and stuff like that. So he was just saying that it's actually the cost of assembly. So if you wanted to like produce an O-ring figure line, the cost of the plastic isn't really the issue. It's the cost of assembly, because an O-ring figure has an O-ring, screws, metal T-hook, and all of that, and they have to be riveted together. They've got those metal rivets that hold the joints together, where at that 1/12 scale, they're just kind of boil and pop figures, so they could just be popped together. So they're saving there. So I think part of it has to do with that. And then two, Marvel Legends, I think, was the 1/12 scale originator. It all started with the Marvel Legends line. And the Legends line came out so you could add more detail, get a more realistic looking figure. Now as technology has increased, you can get better face sculpts and stuff on a smaller figure. But back in the early 2000s, these technologies didn't exist. So, and they could charge more for them. So at the time, let's just say when Marvel Legends first started coming out, which would be like early 2000s, right? An action figure was $10. Let's just say nine or $10. A Marvel Legends figure is $20. So they're getting $20, and the adult collector's willing to pay that. So why not cater to them? I think it's from a business perspective, it makes sense. For me, I bought some of them. I thought they were cool. It was nice to have like a giant Thor. I had the Toy Biz ones. Remember the Toy Biz Marvel Legends? They were like the original ones. I got them just to have these awesome figures with great accessories that the figure could actually hold them. Also like hands. 1/18 scale hands are a little harder to do than a 1/12 scale hand. They could get much better grip on their weapons and hold them in better stances. So, yes, snap together figures are easier. So, hey, Coach Chad, how are you? So, I don't know. What do you think about that, guys?
So, for Boba Hicks, he was asking, I wonder how a wrestling line would do at 1/18 scale. I'm ready to wrestle you, brother.
So they actually did do. Oh no, they did. Were they USC figures? No, they did wrestling figures at 1/18 scale. It was when I was out of collecting. It was when the Marvel was doing Marvel Legends at 1/18 scale. Do you remember those? I mean, I missed out on a ton of those because I wasn't in collecting at the time. But sometimes I would see them on the store shelves when they did all the Marvel Legends at 3 3/4 inch. They also did wrestling and UFC figures and a bunch of different toy lines. But these I like. They've done better. The Marvel 3 3/4 inch, that were kind of made in the modern style. Do you remember them? Did you have any of them? Did anyone collect them? Mm-hmm. They're pretty cool, and there's some really nice sculpts, but they're almost like over articulated. Have you ever seen them where they get loose? The ball joints get loose on them, and they're kind of like. It's hard to stand.
I was going to bring up character options. Okay,
sure.
This is a UK line here, and let me embiggen myself just very quickly so you can see what I'm holding up here. This is a John Pertwee figure from Doctor Who. Okay, and this is like a 5-inch figure. I think they were called 5-inch figures, and this is what the main line was, and most of the line was like this, including the play sets and any other things that came out for it. for a short period of time, right after Peter Capaldi became the Doctor, they tried to say, okay, we're going to do away with the 5-inch scale figures, and we're going to go to 3 3/4 inch figures, and that's the way it's going to be. The fans rebelled, and I mean really, really, really rebelled. We not buying that crap. We've already put so much money into this, and we have so many figures, and we're not buying everything all over again. And they finally relented and began releasing once again the newer Doctor figures in this scale here. And so you can get to a certain point to where this happened, I think, with Marvel. They tried to come out with the smaller scale with the lesser articulation figures that were on the nostalgia card backs. If you remember those, I think the last thing that came out was the Ghost Rider set in that, and now that has been put on a hiatus, which is just another name for gone. What do we have here, there, Will?
Oh, that's the Jazzwares, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, there we go. There's Electro, or is that Loki? I can't tell.
I think it's Loki.
Yeah, it's Loki. Which I like those figures because they're about the articulation that a kid would play with, not necessarily an adult. We have to remember toys were made for kids to play with, not for big old adults like us.
Yeah. Will, you're muted.
Oh, that's why you didn't hear me say it's Loki. So I love the designs on these, absolutely. But these were made for adults, and like I said, at this articulation, they should have been, I don't know, under $10. I picked most of mine up for about $5 because they went on clearance because they sit around. But I love them. They did have wrist articulation, which was kind of neat to have. But I would love these at the new, or like what? Where is it? Like, Batman or Spin Master. They're doing 11 points of articulation, which, I think is enough for fun play, but not too much because Gojitron did say he didn't like the Marvel. He put a comment in there that Marvel Universe 375 line because they were like over articulated. Like they tried to put way too much in there. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a point, and like I said, they would just like get loose and go into these unnatural poses, and they would look kind of weird. I don't know. They just never really did it for me. So I would love this styling with the new like 11 points of articulation. This is the old Loki. This is the one from the 70s, right? Or even 60s, right? Did they draw him like this?
Yeah, and Goji agrees with me when we're going at that scale. Somewhere between 5 and 7 points of articulation are perfect at that scale. I think he's right on that. What do you think there, Will?
For superheroes, yeah, because they're mostly just kicking butt there. G.I. Joe, though, yeah. G.I. Joe, they're holding accessories. They've got to hold their guns and stuff. So I think, a little more in there. And
well, when the Hasbro G.I. Joe figures came out, the O-ring figures back in the early 80s, that was a game changer as far as 3 3/4 inch goes, because now we could move their elbows, we could move their knees, we could move their waist. It's something that we couldn't do with our Star Wars people because they only had 5 points of articulation. Their knees didn't bend, their elbows didn't bend. They weren't designed to do that. They were designed to sit down and go into a cockpit of a spaceship.
You brought up the ab crunch on the Batman earlier. With like that T kind of cut out in their ab, and the way G.I. Joe did it was kind of hidden. I like that. I don't like that ab crunch. The G.I. Joe Classifieds have it. Some of the Marvel Legends have it. I don't like that type. I think I prefer the torso being, one whole piece and then maybe on a ball joint. So you can move it slightly. You know what I mean? Like it's nicer than this, for example, which is that latest indie, 5 POA where he does.
Well, let's talk about points of articulation versus play value.
Yeah.
Points of articulation, and this is my opinion, and I want to get you guys' opinion on it after I get through running my mouth. But points of articulation when we start getting to that point, we're going away from kid play to adults posing figures on shelves and making dioramas and making action figure photography, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, are we making toys for children, or are we making toys for overgrown children, adults?
Yeah, when I was playing with, and I bought these because these are ones I had as a kid. I didn't care about the articulation. I was playing in the dirt, because I lived in the woods. So I'd play outside. I'd play in the kitchen. I'd play anywhere where I could play with them. I didn't care that they only had 5 POA and a hat. I was rough and tumble with them.
Yeah,
and they were a couple of dollars. They were super cheap. Families in the woods can afford them, and you just go on adventures and be rough with them. G.I. Joe was a problem for me because a number of them broke. The way I played with these other figures, my Joes would break.
I'd say it's a matter of the toy line and what they're offering. If it's something for kids, less articulation means less points of breakage. So that's really important. But
let me break in there, Will, and get your thought on this. So I'm going to focus in on Spin Master. I think, in my opinion, that Spin Master has the perfect amount of articulation for a 3
Thank you. Okay. I was going to say that. For me, it's not 100, it's 11 points, I think, right? So I think that's a really good, like I said, it's enough articulation to have fun with. So you're never limited, you know what I mean? In some cases, a stiff arm might be a little, not great, you know what I mean? Or their legs, but they could sit down in vehicles. They could hold an accessory or an item. You can put them into somewhat of a, just a unique pose. You could do something with them that's a little. I think that's, to me, the perfect amount is some articulation, not overly articulated. There's no reason to have, wrist, elbow, shoulder. Now, I love Final Faction. If they just had even elbow articulation, I think they would be great. Or bending at the knees.
Yeah, I've seen those.
But they're only $1, so I'm not complaining about anything.
They're $1.25. Like
in my opinion, Final Faction is what G.I. Joe could have ended up being at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And Gojitron says the G.I. Joe, pronounce that ARAH.
A real American hero, the original.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Swiped their articulation from Mego, who adapted it from Micronauts, who were scaled down from Henshin Cyborg, who was adapted from the original G.I. Joe, the Toy Circle of Life. I've got to get you back on the show sometime, Carl. Those kind of statements are the kind of things that need to be made live on the air.
But the problem with those is, for, again, going to age, I have classified. I can do a lot with them when I do photography. Awesome. I love that Dash.
I love Dash Rendar. I love this figure.
I broke almost every thumb on my Joes. I've lost several legs. Like, Joes vehicles are nice because you can't break them in vehicles. You can break them in play when you're outside.
Sure.
So it's just like I kind of fell away from G.I. Joe because I like the fact that, I picked up Stargate. I couldn't break these, and I never had to put them away.
What about and all great points? And I think as long as the toy is fun, I think that's here's some things that I didn't like about articulation or lack of articulation. Some toy lines, especially the cheaper ones, where the figure comes with an accessory that you can't even hold. That's like as a kid, I remember having those where, you get a gun that's too big for the hand, or a gun that just falls out of the hand, or a sword that just falls out of the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Super annoying. I would rather lose articulation and then them have the backpack that actually stays on the figure, or, so if you're a kid, it comes with the stuff. You could use it with that stuff is more important to me for that. So, geez, I lost my train of thought. So go ahead. I was reading.
I I got John's statement up here. It says, I
Yeah.
play Doctor Who with my Star Wars figures. You don't need to do superhero poses with Doctor Who. Of course not. And I'll tell you what I did, John, and you guys might get a kick out of this. So during my time of watching Doctor Who had just become the sixth Doctor, Colin Baker. So I used my Luke Duke action figure from the 3 3/4 inch that came with the General Lee, and I took Obi-Wan Kenobi's vinyl cape or whatever and put it on him and made him be my Doctor Who figure that I played with as a child.
Will brings
Very
up
cool.
a good point, inadvertently showing off that indie figure. There's no horse yet. Don't have a horse so they can have something to ride. That's such a stupid idea to not put the horse out yet.
And Boba Hicks wants to get our ideas about the 4.5 inch scale that Kenner, Aliens, Predator, and Jurassic Park lines use. That was, in my opinion, now this is an opinion, guys. I'm not saying this is fact, but in my opinion, that was a direct offshoot of Superpowers, which were slightly larger than Star Wars 3 3/4 inch figures. And if we remember, at that time, most action figure lines went over to that. We had after the Batman movie came out and the figures came back again, we had the Dark Knight collection. We had the DC superheroes that Toy Biz had done. Then we came out with the Kenner Aliens and Predator, RoboCop, Jurassic Park. All of those use the same style of articulate. There you go. The articulation was about the same. The figures were all at the same size, which is that 4.5 inch scale, which is 1/16, if I'm not mistaken.
So Jurassic Park, I can show it here. Just a bit bigger.
Yeah, that's the 4.5 inches as opposed to a 3 3/4, and yes, they were still toys made for kids. They could play outside in the dirt with them. They couldn't break them because the way the joints were made and the way the seams were done, that they weren't glued together. They were actually welded together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you couldn't take
So,
those figures apart.
Those lines, I was a little older, so for the mid to late 90s, I was in my early 20s, and I didn't play with a lot of them, and I probably didn't appreciate them at the time. I saw them and I was aware of them, but I've watched live streams and I've seen, where people are going back through them and looking at them. I think they are criminally underrated toy lines.
I agree.
And I remembered the point I was going to bring up back then, before when I got sidetracked, was that articulation. What do you think about, like, okay, so superpowers, you squeeze their legs, they go like this, right? And that was kind of a limit to articulation. I personally would prefer that they just make them 5 POA free moving figures. What do you guys think about that? Because even like this new indie has a spring-loaded arm, and I don't know if you guys saw, I was showing on the Hangout we did over the weekend. He comes with the machete, and that's supposed to be machete chopping action. Every time you do this, he chucks the machete across the room. And I lost it twice.
Designed to hold it in his hand properly, which is a design error on the part of the engineer.
I don't really need a spring assist to chop someone. I could do it myself. I don't need a spring assist to punch someone. Gimmicks
the action features, I think, were added into the. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, the action features, I think, were added into the Superpowers line to try to get some value out of them, to try to make the kids want to get them. But that was the whole idea behind the name of the line in the first place, was Superpowers. Each figure had its own supposedly unique superpower, although Flash and Aquaman superpower was the exact same thing, but we're let's not hash it out. But the idea was let's have more than just an action figure that can move his arms and legs. Let's have one that has a feature where he can fight or whatever. Nice, but I'm kind of inclined to go along with Todd McFarlane, who is reviving the Superpowers line, and he takes all the superpower features out of them to save money. One, and two, it's unnecessary because that's not the way we're playing with those figures. Those figures are designed to maybe get kids to buy them, but they know that we're going to nostalgia buy them, and we're not going to play with them the way we did our Superpowers figures. There he goes. He's chucking it. So what you're going to have to do is get you some magician's wax and wax his hand up real good and press that machete into his hand, and maybe he'll hold on to it from then on out.
I think Will's going to do that on purpose.
He did that on purpose to show us what it did, but yeah.
He's going to keep it that way. Will,
that kind of crap just annoys me because as a kid, I would lose that thing in a second. You know what I mean? So Shane Hammer, take posability over a gimmick any day.
I do think it was in part because toy companies, as competition kept ramping up, because like Hasbro was getting screwed over by Kenner, who was just the experts at like movie lines and action toys.
Well, if you remember when the Dark Knight collection came out, which I think was a direct offshoot of the Superpowers line, so was Robin Hood. They even reused books and everything on those. What was the first thing that got lost? The superpower. What was the second thing that got lost? The knee articulation.
Yeah. But I remember like with G.I. Joe, they did the in '93 they were desperate, so they did the Street Fighter G.I. Joes. And Chun-Li had the thick leg kick, the same one that came with the Ninja Force Scarlet, and I hated it. I couldn't pose her and do the same things I could do with my other figures. Now some action features, like if you remember Toy Biz in their X-Men line, Wolverine had this little L-shaped plastic piece where you could like pull his retractable claws in. That was a good play feature.
That's a good idea.
It didn't affect the articulation of the arms. It didn't affect the fact that he could sit down. I couldn't do stuff with Chun-Li or Scarlet that I could do with those figures. So it depends on what that play feature is. That Indy bothers me because he's just doing squats. He's going to have the nicest buns, but he has no horse to ride.
Yeah, so and dumb. They haven't learned their lesson because I don't know if you saw, but yesterday I released a video on some of the new Marvel Epic Heroes series 4-inch figures coming out. I personally really like that line because, like I said, it integrates with my Spin Master, which newsflash, I don't know if I ever told anyone, but Spin Master, Batman, and DC Heroes is my favorite toy line of the last 5 years, hands down. I absolutely love it, and for a lot of reasons. And I know a lot of people crap all over it, but I don't care. I love it. It's great for me. But one of the new figures coming out is Doc Ock, and they went with this retro water blaster feature where you put a little plunger in a glass of water and then it shoots out of one of his tentacles. Makes no sense, first of all. Second of all, you've got a tentacle with a rubber hose coming out of the side of it. Makes no sense. And then third, because they added that water feature, he's 5 POA instead of the 11 POA that all the other figures are. They also did a Spider-Man with like a web gun that shoots water. When did Spider-Man ever make a gun out of webs that then shot water? And what's the purpose of it? But they're doing it. They're putting that feature in. I don't know why. I would have rather them take the tooling and all the costs for that and make 3 more villains for the line, because I would have just taken those. And then also the Mech Strike Megasaurs, which I initially credited them for at least trying to do something different. They came up with this Mech Strike Megasaurs storyline where each hero had this like animal mech companion that turned into body armor. Mm-hmm. But when you put that armor on them, the second you try to stand them up or play with them, it falls apart. It's like snap-on armor that goes on their legs, arms, and torso, but it just falls apart, So once again,
it kind of reminds me of that fractal armor that came on the Total Justice figures. And the first thing I did was take all that crap and put it into a box somewhere and forget about it.
And I would have just rather them just go straight with more figures, less gimmicks like that, and give us like I said, there's like 7 Spider-Man figures in that line.
There's a few,
and there's
today.
There's Venom, Carnage, and that Doc Ock. 3 villains. That's it.
There's a fear today that we saw recently where you start a new line, people are nervous. Like, how far are you gonna get? because I know Gogitron, for example, he's annoyed because it's on hiatus, which means they canceled it probably.
Yeah.
They I don't know the name of it, but it's the 3 3/4 scale.
The one I was talking about
Marvel
earlier.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Marvel Legends 3 3/4
It's
inch. That's
called
what
the
they
Marvel Legends Retro Collection.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're doing a
Okay.
new line, and you're doing 5 or 6 Spider-Men, it's like I'm kind of nervous about investing in the line. Are they going to stop after 2 or 3 waves, and you're going to end up with like 10 Spider-Men and like 5 other figures?
Listen, Spin Master's been putting a new version of Batman in every line, but I get it because if a kid's getting into the line this year, he wants a version of Batman. So there's always going to be those multiple Spider-Mans, but like, why do we need? The thing is, okay, so they also announced the X-Men 97, which some people were like, it's a toy line for kids, and they're basing it on a 90s cartoon. But Disney Plus is launching a new cartoon based on that, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
because someone was making the point like, why are they doing this? It's because it's supposed to go with the new cartoon. I think these figures were just leaked early or wound up on store shelves somehow 3 months early. They're supposed to come out this fall, I believe. So I think that's going to really make or break the line. I was saying this on another stream recently. If you look 2 aisles over from the male action figure line, you're going to see the preschool, which is like the pre-K to 6 or 7-year-old lines with Paw Patrol, Bluey, all of those things. They all have current cartoons that are educational and teach kids good manners and stuff, and the toys to support them. So they could just keep putting stuff out, and people are going to keep buying them.
Yeah.
Because parents, that's what they sit their kid in front of the TV to watch. So if we can get some kids between that 6 and 7-year-old to 12-year-old range to get into this X-Men cartoon, to consume some of these. The movies also, I don't think are holding kids' attention. They're not watching them the way we used to when we were kids. It's because there's so much of it, I think. When I was a kid,
I agree. I want to try to catch up with the chat here.
Sure. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Gojitron says he despises built-in action features that limits articulation and increase opportunities for breakage, and that is correct. Look at Superpowers, vintage Superpowers line. How many of those figures are broken, and it affects the price of the figure and the playability of it because now it doesn't work anymore. And of course, we have Bjorn here who says he's not a fan of gimmicks and action figures. War Made of Cardboard says, he's talking about me and my figure. He said his favorite Doctor Who was the body of Hoth Luke, the head of Jedi Luke, the coat of 4LOM Zuckuss, and other figures, Obi-Wan, Han, and other Lukes, all regenerated into Doctors too. And G.I. Joe was his unit. Yeah, I did the same thing. G.I. Joe was unit, and the Dukes of Hazzard figures were my kind of the Doctor Who figures. Master Universe was full of gimmick toys, Daniel Carhoonan, and we were talking about that a little earlier. Moving on down the line here, Shaitan's Hammer says limited articulation is much better than gimmicks, and I agree with him on that one. And he doesn't mourn the loss of most of the Motu action features in the Origins line. We were talking. Well, I think we've had multiple discussions on that. Some of the action features need to be there for the nostalgia value. I'm looking at you, He-Man. The Thunder Punch He-Man? He needed a cap feature.
I think like the ones that attach to his back, they're an attachment to the figure, and this is just the cyber arms attachment from Final Faction, which I think is the coolest accessory ever invented for action figures. It's a backpack with 2 cyber arms that.
Would you call that an action feature, or would you call that
an accessory, an action accessory? I guess it would be.
There
considered.
we go.
So I think built into the body of the figure, I'd say no. Webster's backpack, yes, that's an awesome feature, but it's built into his backpack.
But then again, Gojitron brings up this point. Original Motu also scraped to the bottom of the barrel looking for action features, looking straight at Mecha Neck, he says. And of course, Real Blast is the same thing. And what his whole body opened up so he could become a big gun, a man gun. And of course, Bjorn put a link up for your earlier video, which I watched and influenced me on today's topic today.
Well, thank you. Like I said, part of the reason of putting up that video, just real quick, was just that in the groups that I follow and that gentleman, 118 Archive, 118 Action Figure Archive, I kept saying it wrong in the video, but, I get most of my news from there because Hasbro and Spin Master, they don't do release things like Mattel does with the Masters of the Universe lines, or Super 7 does with their lines, or Hasbro does Yojo June and has all this classified announcements. They don't announce these. They just come out. And I like that in some sense, but, you just see them leaked. Like someone finds them on the shelf, and then you got to wait 6 months for them. And if you look on the Spin Master website or the Hasbro website, Hasbro Pulse doesn't even carry the Marvel Epic Hero series. So the fact that I see these in these groups dedicated to that only have hundreds of followers, maybe, I don't even think it's in the thousands. I just thought it'd be nice to, for anyone who is interested, because it's something that I care about, just put the video out there and just kind of highlight them. I know a lot of people probably look at them. Even in the comments, people are just like, they don't like them, and that's fine. It's out there for the people that do want to see them.
Do me a favor, Bjorn, and let's get Epic Badger and Will's links up into the chat so that people can subscribe to them if they haven't already done so, and go visit their pages and look at their stuff. John says, if the play feature makes sense and does not interfere with articulation and is not delicate, I like it. Ergo Wolverine's claws equals perfect. Fist firing Shogun Warrior Godzilla. What in the hell is that? And still love Godzilla. But yeah, Godzilla firing his fist off bothered me as a child as well, because Godzilla, A, never did that, and B, is Godzilla now a Mecha Godzilla? No, he's Godzilla, right? So, no, some things don't make sense. And then Bjorn says, Batman flies.
Sure. I'd like to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jesse. I'll get back to the chat in just a second.
I was just going to go on a tangent about about the death of a scale. So late 80s through the 90s, Galoob was real big on the micro stuff. You had micro machines. I know it's Godzilla, but you had your micro machine, your mini playsets, your pocket playsets, your highways and byways. And then at the time that they were doing licenses for Power of the Force, Galoob told Lucasfilm basically, hey, they can't do the micro stuff. We can do micro Star Wars. And that cuts into Kenner and later Hasbro's bottom line.
Yeah. So
in 97, when Galoob had a bad day, essentially Hasbro swooped in and bought them. And then there was a little bit of stuff like Action Fleet scale for Phantom Menace, but they killed it. And Hasbro's mindset is, screw this micro stuff, let's kill it off. And then because Galoob was the leader, now we don't have to have parents buying this different scale. They can go back to buying 3 3/4 scale.
And we make more money and blah blah blah, and it all that kind of bottom line is greed in and of itself, I think. And of course, sour grapes, because as soon as we buy the line, let's just slit its throat.
Yeah. Well, Galoob was such a danger to Hasbro because, like, I'll show an example here. So you got, you have micro machines, but they came out with Action Fleet, which is roughly 195, 1/100 scale. I mean, it's not exact science, but because they were the only ones doing the scale, they were like, oh, we could do real-world military vehicles like Battle Squad. We could do Aliens versus Predators. And you could do little alien predator people. Oh, we could do Starship Troopers. Unfortunately, they're packed away in a box. But I have the
Right.
So as a kid, I could just stick with this one scale and have a massive world of play value. And it sucked for Hasbro because I wasn't buying their products. So then of course, Galoob has a bad day, so Hasbro sweeps in and buys them up and says, we're canceling all these lines. Now we don't have a competitor in a different scale.
Yeah. And that happens far too frequently in the toy world. Now, Boba Hicks goes back and he says that he was annoyed that they put out the retro Marvel Legends line on hiatus because he was enjoying picking up his favorite characters and thought the cards looked good. Those looked great as display on card anyway, I thought. As a matter of fact, I bought a couple of them. I think I got Captain America. I got Spider-Man in that line, and their classic outfits. Never removed them from the cards because that's the way I wanted to display them. And yes, I know I'm one of those bad open up the figure and play with it once, but those weren't the kind of figures I wanted to do that with. I wanted to look at them in the way they were designed to be looked at on the shelf and in a store. And then Gojutron says he didn't want those X-Men figures until he saw the Sentinel, which they perfectly fit with, and I agree with him on that one.
Yeah, that looks fun. I hope
John says Batman sells because he has vehicles and play sets and kids can world build, and also Batman has different outfits for swimming under the ocean and going to the Arctic and tactical suits and what have you for whatever he's doing. And that's why there's always a Batman in every line, and there's always a Spider-Man in every line, and it goes down to that. Every time they come out with a new SKU, they're going to have a Batman in it. Spin Master's doing that, and of course they put the tweak on it so that those who already have one will want to buy the new one as well. So we and thank you Gojutron and Bjorn for putting out those links. I appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Unfortunately, my channel, I think a lot of my videos might be set to private. I'm not a YouTuber. I just put up stuff once in a while, so I might have to go fix some things. So you might not see a lot right now.
Well, you have a lot of really good stuff.
I know you do Instagram as well there, Jesse, and I think a lot of your stuff is photography on Instagram, but you also do live streams. Mm-hmm. And the live streams that you do are very, very lovely and informative, usually on a Sunday morning before I do my show. And
I think those are what might be set to private. I need to go fix that.
Yeah, if you set a lot of people do that. I haven't done that because I'm trying to monetize, but a lot of people would do that so that the people who were watching the live streams will come and watch it live instead of just waiting for the replay. Of course, I get my views however I can get them, so I really don't mind that so much. Still pushing for cardboard figures, says World Cardboard. What dude, cardboard figures are so easy to do. You print them out, you paste them on a piece of cardboard, and you cut it out in the shape of the figure, and boom, cardboard figures. And of course, paper dolls were popular and still are. I think you can buy still paper dolls to this day.
But a World Made of Cardboard's figures that he showed us at Joe Fest are a lot more complicated than that. Now they are, you just print them out, but he's got some really ingenious engineering involved in those. And, all it's going to take is for him to put them out, and I'll be making them. So
there we go. So there's links to these channels, folks, up on the screen now. Hopefully the nothing will happen to this stream so that I can keep it up, and the live chat will be replay will be active. So at least you can go in and click those links in the live chat if you're rewatching this. Bjorn's got both the Green Goblin and the Hobgoblin for a future diorama. Okay.
Very cool.
Quality over quantity.
So for a World Made of Cardboard, I thought you might enjoy this. I did pick up a new board game. It was a Kickstarter called Outrun the Bear.
Outrun the Bear.
And they come with little cardboard figures.
Like that.
What's nice is it's a linear game, and the bear sits and takes up the whole space, so you're constantly moving forward and trying not to get eaten.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it just comes with little people.
That's how almost every board game was when I was a kid. If you got any licensed board game, it was a little plastic clip and a cardboard cutout that you put in there.
And these are nice. These are nice and thick. Like they're not gonna bend and break. So this is how you do cardboard figures if you're gonna do them. Don't make them like the card back for some of these modern.
Now,
action
now,
figures.
back in the day, I'm talking about vintage, back when He-Man figures were first coming out in 1982-ish. They did a cardboard game like that for He-Man with a cardboard Grayskull, cardboard He-Man figures that were advertised in the story booklets that came with the figures. Do you remember that, Will?
I do. I do remember that. And speaking of cardboard figures, I've got that new Batmobile. It was featured in my video. It's on order and it's coming. But one interesting note that comes with that Batmobile is that because it has like a launching cannon in the front, is it says it comes with 3 cardboard target figures to knock out. So when I get it in, I'm gonna assemble them. I hope they're cool. It didn't show a picture of them, so I don't know what if you cut them out of the package or something. But I thought that was a pretty neat idea that it comes with the 3 figures, so you could use your cannon to knock them down.
I would think that. Well, I'm thinking vintage too, but that sounds like something die cut that you kind of fold the back end of it. You set it up and then boom, you knock it down.
So as soon as I get that one, I'll put up a video of it and show you.
Now, Gojitron says, I'm still waiting for someone to do a repro of the Amsco playsets. Does anybody know what he's talking about?
I'm not sure about the Amsco playsets, but if you describe them, maybe I've seen them.
And cardboard set, that was a neat little game there, Jesse. And he also talks to Gojitron. I agree. The only one I can afford is the Waltons playset. Not much action in the Waltons.
So what would that involve? Is it like cleaning the house before John Boy gets home from the war, or is it like who can say goodnight to everyone the quickest?
Yeah, it sounds like something a girl would do. You set up the little house, you put the little furniture in it, and you set figures in it, sort of like dollhouse play.
I imagine it's just a circle around the house, and every room is a family member, and you have a clock going towards midnight, and you have to just be like, "Good night, Grandpa." Roll a 5. Okay. Good night, Grandpa. Okay. How many people do I have left?
Well, that brings up an interesting thing. Now we're getting off a scale here and starting to talk about cardboard toys. Color forms came out, and there were some neat color forms and some silly ones, but my favorite was the Superman set that came out that had a phone booth you can open up and stick Superman's color form in it and move the slot and then open it back up, and it was the Clark Kent color form behind it. There was a Shogun Warriors one, but I don't recall there ever being a Walton's color form set, and I don't think
I had a Hulk play set when I was a kid that you rotated a cylinder and you put Banner in, and he would come out as the Hulk. I don't know if that's one of those cardboard play sets. I just kind of remember it.
You know what he's talking about now. I do remember these now. He spurred a memory. The Amsco play sets, they had Space 1999. They had Marvel Universe. I remember the Marvel Universe. It actually was like a little city. And then you had the Walton's house. They were all cardboard play sets and vehicles. Yes, I do remember that. And the city set for the Marvel Universe was cool as hell.
I would love it.
So,
Yeah. The Marvel World was a 3D cardboard playset of the Marvel Universe, including the Daily Bugle, Baxter Building, the Avengers Mansion, and the Sanctum Sanctorium. Yeah, and it was like a little New York City playset. There was little cardboard buildings in it, and you had the little counters. I guess are little cardboard figures that you could set up around it. It was kind of cool, sort of like the Godzilla versus the Tricephalon monster set, if you will. Not
kind of like cardboard Micro Machines playsets, or
but instead of the plastic army men type figures, it was just little cardboard figures.
Well, we never had cardboard. We used plastic.
Well,
if you want to talk about scale,
don't disparage World Made of Cardboard. His whole life consists of making cardboard stuff. Show that thing that you just showed up there for a minute, Jesse.
So this is part of the Highways and Byways line. Oh, where'd the box
The Micro Machines.
Yeah,
Jesse, you could connect those playsets, right?
Yeah, they were modular. They were modular.
So, yeah, you can see an example on the box here. They all came with little roads.
And those road signs too. I like that.
But what's nice is like Highways and Byways. they've got ports. They've got, obviously, these are two different sets, but they're in the mountains. You've got cities, you got farms. You could just build a continuous playset on a table of just the United States using the highway system to drive your cars around. And it's like, that's smart.
Another wonderful feature for that scale, was the interconnectivity of it.
Yeah, you can see on this one, probably easier this side, there's these little tabs down here.
I see.
And on the bottom, if I can get under the camera, you just insert the road and then push it forward and it sticks in place. And that way you can change, because there are roads that are real long, some that are real short. So you could really make a complicated and fun playset out of it.
The Marvel World playset was the most rare Amsco playset. $100 just for one cardboard cutout figure for that. I imagine that kind of stuff would be rare because it got lost, torn up, destroyed.
I would say clearly there is no one scale. I mean, we all sat here and we all talked about it today. The things that everyone has something they like about their favorite scale.
Yeah.
But it's easy for us to recognize the things that bring joy to other people based on those scales. Each scale has its own merit, and like I said, one or another will always be the most popular at the time. Yeah. But I don't think they're ever one scale is gonna just go away, or there'll ever be a universal scale.
No, like my room is so complicated because I've got micro figures, I've got Action Fleet,
and a giant freaking moose behind.
I got 5 POA, and then I got this boy. So it's like, for me, it's as a collector, it's what do I like? I don't go all in on. I don't collect Marvel Legends.
Sergeant Slaughter with the American flag riding a giant moose, and that has to be the most epic thing ever.
America. But it's not the biggest thing I own. I'll have to go grab it. It's heavy.
Okay.
Let's see. Warmade Cardboard says, I would love to get a complete set with Buck Rogers. I had that Buck Rogers set with the big flying saucer with the little colored dome on top of it. I have all the Godzilla figures and Draconian fighters from both of those sets. And Godzilla versus the Tricephalon monster is one of the best play sets ever produced. Gojitron, I think, did a video on that, and it brought back a lot of memories for me because I remember that set was what they were selling in the toy section of Fred's Dollar Store, and I wanted it. And the guy that lived across the street, his mom and dad bought it for him before I could get it. And I didn't have it then, but yeah, I'd love to have that set. And of course, I wanted it so bad that I was going to buy it off of eBay. And then when I saw the prices, I said, I'm backing off.
So I did a video earlier on snow speeders. Because the smallest ones I have are the ones that go with this playset. Again, things are packed away for a move, but they're like that big. But I love the snow speeder, so I don't limit myself to one scale.
Look at that thing.
Oh, Lord, is that a black scale snow speeder?
Yep.
Which, if you pair with the Kenner, where'd it go?
I hope you got it.
Kenner's up here.
I hope you got it for a good price. Those things.
Hang on, John's got to go. Thank you for being with us today, John, and you have a good weekend too, sir.
Yep.
So I'll get you off the big screen there, Jess, and let's see. Gojitron says, in my childhood, I went from 12-inch Adventure Team G.I. Joe to 8-inch Mego to 3 3/4-inch Micronauts to Star Wars. I am an all-scale collector. And most of us, especially us old guys who have memorabilia about all the different toys we play with the kids, are glad to get them and enjoy them in the scales that they come in. That's an understandable thing. Let's see. Micro Machines playsets the Badger has are fantastic, says Boba Hicks. I can't wait to see his toy setup when his new place. What did we just show there, Jess? Let's see that again.
Boba Hicks knows I collect micro scale, so it's not just Micro Machines. But like, I've got stuff from Japan for Pokemon. I've got Mighty Max. I've got Will. You're gonna love this one. It's one that's I don't have any yet. I have one in the mail, but there's a line called Computer Warriors. And it's micro scale, and it's imagine things that are on your desk as a nerd in the late 80s. So you have a computer, which turns into a playset. You have a Pepsi can, which turns into a vehicle. It's just a little printer that opens up to be a defensive bunker. It's all the stuff that a nerd would put on their computer, and then they would start fighting, or on their desk and would start fighting.
Gotcha. Or if your toys came to life and they had to repurpose an office desk into a war scenario.
I could see the stop motion video of that. They're fighting each other, and the door handle starts jiggling, and they all go back to their little thing. He comes in, he looks around, like that was over here a minute ago.
And then you cut to a real Pepsi being opened and drunk, and then the little guy's like, "No."
Bo Hicks says, Will, he wants to see you do a video on your Trendmasters collection someday, please.
Trendmasters, or the Spin Masters. I think he means Spin Masters.
I think he meant
I hope he means Spin Masters because
DC stuff.
I have this half-made video of all my Spin Master stuff because I've been collecting it. I think the line started in 2018, so I've been collecting it for since it started, and I've got all kinds of stuff. I'd love to just do them all, or maybe even in just small parts.
Will, can you take a second to show off your core vehicle behind you?
Mm-hmm.
I just think this is really neat because we talk about G.I. Joes, but we don't talk about the core, which is a competitor. But they were doing some amazing stuff too. Yeah,
you know what? And they're all but missing. I was even going to do a video on that. If you could. Oh, I was going to say, the core has been coming out with like several lines, but since 2020 they've been all but missing in the US. So I was going to do I see a lot of posts about their new products coming out, but I never see them on store shelves or even online. So I don't know what they're doing. They're distributing overseas and they're not in the US, but they always had some cool stuff that was really compatible. This is a really neat vehicle, and this one's from the 80s. But yeah, some of their stuff was just as good or better than some of the G.I. Joe stuff. But yeah, I hear the music.
Yeah, it's about that time. We're getting close to 2 hours. We talked a long time about scale. I think the conclusion that I think everybody here on the panel has come to, and including the chat, was scale is subjective, very subjective. And is it really that important? It depends on how you're playing, what you're doing. Play with what you like and enjoy the things that you like. And as always, I'll give Jesse and Wilhelm the last word before we close out the show today.
Thanks for watching. Yeah, I know.
I don't have anything to say, but just love your micro machines.
There you go. And as always, everyone have a good journey. And until next time, I'm out, and we'll see y'all all again very soon.
Special thanks to the channel supporters. Without your help, these adventures would not be possible. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's adventure, please hit like, subscribe, and share the video.